The specific section of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms that the Grievance Committee mentions is Section 7, which is bodily autonomy. And I absolutely agree that bodily autonomy was completely thrown out the window with the vaccine mandate within the Canadian Armed Forces. It was completely ignored. There seems to be a misconception out there that when someone takes the oath and puts on a uniform, that they give up all their rights as a Canadian citizen, and that is so not true. And under the National Defence Act, the Chief of Defence Staff cannot issue an order that violates the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. So Section 7, if his own committee is telling him that he breached it, and also I have the briefing note that was provided to him before he brought in the mandate that told him he couldn't do this based on charter violations as well as other legal platforms. The goal of the lawsuit, first of all, is to hold the chain of command to account of what they have done. It's very much an abuse of power lawsuit, with the COVID mandate as an example of abuse of power within the forces. They are also seeking damages, which is the court's only way of trying to make them whole. This review committee is part of the grievance process within the Canadian Armed Forces. So a committee issues a decision, and then it goes to the final authority for his decision. And the final authority is the Chief of Defence Staff. So that is one of the questions in the lawsuit that we want the court to answer is, should the Chief of Defence Staff be the final authority on an order that he issued? Is that the appropriate venue? The lawsuit itself is about abuse of power and the far more serious issues that have been present in the Canadian Armed Forces for decades now. I'm going to ask the court in our lawsuit to determine that it's an unlawful order, but I'm basing that on his own review committee has told him, and the briefing note told him, that it would violate the Charter of Rights and Freedoms for him to issue a mandate. And if he violates the Charter of Rights and Freedoms under the National Defence Act, it's an unlawful order. This has to do with how the Canadian Armed Forces are treating their own people. And they got a recruitment problem, and it's getting worse because of how they're treating their people. And when you have one or two people coming forward, even with legitimate complaints, it can be discounted. But when you have hundreds of people coming forward and saying, this is what they have done to me, it has to be paid attention to.